Wait, isn't that your poor ex-wife? I thought you said she could never have children. Then how did she show up at our wedding with triplets?
Still, this wasn't where my story began. The woman walking confidently into that hall was not the same girl who had once given Daniel her everything. If you truly want to understand why this moment mattered so much, why every whisper in that hall carried years of pain and triumph, then I need to take you back to where it all started. But before I do that, please do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back. My name is Amelia, and before I ever became the woman who walked into her ex-husband's wedding with her head held high, I was just a young girl who believed in fairy tales. At 23, I thought I had everything figured out. My dreams were simple: a loving husband, children filling our home with laughter, and a life built on love and hard work. I didn't want riches or luxury. I just wanted stability and happiness. And when Daniel came into my life, I thought I had found all of that and more. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that lit up every room. His laugh was confident, his presence commanding. People noticed him wherever he went, and I, quiet, shy, eager to please, was dazzled by the attention he gave me. When he courted me, he spoke in grand promises. "I'll take care of you, Amelia. You'll never have to worry about anything." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I believed him because I wanted to believe. Looking back now, I realize I fell in love with an image, an illusion carefully built out of charm and confidence. But back then, I didn't see the cracks. Our wedding was modest. No chandeliers, no sprawling halls, no endless tables stacked with food. Just a small church with white walls, fresh flowers arranged by Mama Grace and the women from church, and the smiles of neighbors who came to celebrate. My dress wasn't expensive. Mama Grace had worked tirelessly to sew it herself, her wrinkled fingers tugging at fabric laid into the night. I still remember the way she smiled through her tears as she zipped me into it that morning. When I stood at the altar, staring into Daniel's eyes, nothing else mattered. Not the small crowd, not the lack of luxury. All I saw was him. All I felt was love. When he slipped the ring on my finger, I whispered silently to myself, "This is it. This is forever." The first few months of marriage were beautiful. We laughed over burnt dinners, danced in the living room to songs on the radio, and made plans for the children we both claimed to want. I thought we were building something strong, something unshakable. But there were signs, small at first, that I chose to ignore. Daniel was charismatic, but sometimes his confidence turned into arrogance. He liked being admired, liked being the center of attention. At gatherings, he would laugh a little too loudly, linger a little too long in conversations with other women. One day, a friend pulled me aside after church. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Amelia, I don't know how to tell you this, but Daniel has a child. With Vanessa." The words knocked the air out of me. My ears rang. My knees felt weak. That night, I confronted him. My voice shook as I asked, "Daniel, is it true? Do you have a child with Vanessa?" He didn't flinch. He didn't look guilty. He just smirked and said, "That was before us. A mistake. Forget about it. You're my wife now. That's all that matters." I wanted to push further, to demand details, to scream. But his calmness, his utter lack of shame, disarmed me. I convinced myself it wasn't important, that the past didn't matter, that I was his future. So I swallowed my doubts, buried them deep, and chose to trust him. And because of that choice, I became blind to the cracks spreading silently through our marriage. I poured myself into being the perfect wife. I woke up early to prepare his meals, stayed up late to tidy our little home. I budgeted carefully, saving every coin I could. Daniel liked nice things, new shirts, polished shoes, nights out with friends, and I wanted to make sure he always had what he wanted. I gave up little pieces of myself for him, telling myself that's what love meant. Sacrifice, devotion, endurance. I dreamed of children's laughter filling our home, of Daniel cradling our baby in his arms, of birthdays and anniversaries spent surrounded by family. But slowly I began to notice a shift. His eyes didn't light up when he looked at me anymore. His laughter wasn't for me. And the promises he once whispered so sweetly began to sour into complaints and criticism. Still, I held on, because I believed love could fix anything. And for a time, I fooled myself into thinking it was enough. If I could go back and speak to that girl I was at 23, I would shake her gently and tell her to open her eyes. To see the arrogance behind the charm, the selfishness hidden beneath the promises. But I can't. All I can do is tell you the story now. Because that young woman's blind devotion is what set me on the path that led to heartbreak, betrayal, and eventually the moment you saw at the wedding. But we're not there yet. This was just the beginning. I should have paid attention to the red flags early on. They weren't small hints, not really, they were warnings. But when a woman is in love, when her heart is wrapped around the idea of a forever she is already built in her mind, she will excuse anything. She will tell herself, it's not important. He loves me. That's enough. One of the earliest warnings came not from Daniel's mouth, but from the whispers of others. It was a Sunday after church, the sun blazing down on us, as I stood outside chatting with a friend. She fidgeted, her eyes darting nervously before she finally leaned in and said the words that made my stomach twist. Amelia? I don't know how to say this, but people are talking. They say Daniel has a child. With Vanessa. I froze. My ears buzzed. My heart hammered against my ribs. What? I whispered, almost choking on the word. She looked away, guilt and pity clouding her face. I thought you should know. That night, I confronted him. We were in the living room. Daniel stretched out on the couch with his shoes still on, scrolling through his phone. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of my dress. Daniel, I began softly, trying to steady my voice. I heard something today. Someone said you have a child. With Vanessa. Is it true? His eyes lifted lazily from his phone. No shock. No guilt. Just a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. That, he said with a dismissive chuckle. That was before us. A mistake. Forget about it. I blinked at him, my throat dry. But Daniel, a child. He cut me off with a sharp look. I said forget about it. You're my wife now. That's all that matters. His tone brooked no argument. I swallowed my doubts, silenced my questions, and told myself he was right. The past was the past. I was his wife now. That was what mattered. But a seed of unease had been planted, and though I tried to ignore it, it would grow with time. Daniel's charm had been what drew me in, but it was also his arrogance dressed up in a smile. In the early days, I thought his confidence was strength. He had a way of carrying himself like the world belonged to him. He spoke loudly, laughed even louder, and always wanted the spotlight. At gatherings, he lingered too long in conversations with women, his hand brushing an arm here, a shoulder there. When I frowned, he would wave it off. Don't be insecure, Amelia, he'd say with a scoff. It's not attractive. And I, desperate to keep the peace, would stay quiet. Whenever I brought up concerns about our finances, about his late nights, about his temper, he dismissed me. You worry too much, he'd say. Let me handle things. That dismissiveness stung, but I convinced myself it was normal. That men were like that patience was my duty as a wife. If only I had known then how those little dismissals were stepping stones toward the cliff he would eventually push me over. The first year of marriage slipped by quickly. I waited eagerly for the day I would feel a flutter in my belly, for the day I could surprise Daniel with the news of a baby on the way. Each month, I prayed, counted days, and held my breath when my body felt different. Each month, disappointment crushed me. By the second year, Daniel's patience wore thin. His arrogance turned into accusation. What's wrong with you, Amelia? He snapped one evening as he threw his tie onto the couch. Why isn't this happening? Why can't you give me a child? I froze, the plate in my hand trembling. Daniel, maybe we should go to the doctor. Together. Just to make sure. His head jerked toward me, his eyes cold. Don't you dare insult me like that. I already have a child. The problem is you. Always you. The words sliced into me, deeper than he realized. I went to the hospital anyway. If he wouldn't go, I would. Blood tests.
Scans.
Examinations that left me sore and humiliated. The sharp sting of needles, the cold press of machines, the endless waiting rooms where women whispered and glanced at me with pity. Every result came back the same. I was fine.
Perfectly healthy.
I came home with the papers clutched in my hand, my heart pounding with cautious hope. Maybe if Daniel saw them, he would soften. Maybe he would realize we needed to try together. Daniel, I said gently, sliding the results across the table. The doctor says I'm fine. Please, let's do this together. Let's get you tested too. Maybe we'll find an answer. He didn't even glance at the papers. He shoved them aside with one dismissive hand. So the doctors are wrong now? You think you're fine? Then why aren't you pregnant, Amelia? His voice dripped with mockery. Don't waste my time with nonsense. I stood there, speechless. Tears burned my eyes, but I swallowed them back. I had learned that tears only annoyed him further. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring into the darkness as silent sobs shook my body. He slept peacefully, his back turned to me, while I drowned in loneliness. It became routine. Every month that passed without a pregnancy was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Daniel's words grew sharper, crueler. You're barren, he spat one night, his face twisted with disgust. What use are you to me if you can't even give me a child? Those words carved themselves into me like knives. I carried them in my chest, heavy and suffocating. I tried harder, changing my diet, taking herbs, praying longer, fasting. I begged God to bless me with a child, not just for me, but so Daniel would stop looking at me like I was worthless. But nothing changed. And the more time passed, the colder Daniel became. Mama, my mother, noticed. One evening, as we sat in her small kitchen, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes, always gentle, searched mine. My daughter, you look so tired. Your eyes carry storms. What is happening? I forced a smile, blinking back tears. I'm fine, Mama. Just tired. But I wasn't fine. I was breaking. Slowly, silently, piece by piece. I couldn't tell her everything. I couldn't bear to see her heart break with mine. So I carried it alone. By the 3rd year of our marriage, Daniel and I were strangers living under the same roof. He no longer touched me with affection. His laughter was for others, not for me. He spent more time out of the house, coming home late with excuses that didn't add up. At home, silence stretched between us like a wall. Even when we sat at the same table, it felt like we were oceans apart. And always, hovering in the air like a storm cloud, was the unspoken accusation. You failed me. I began to believe it. I began to look in the mirror and see a barren woman, unworthy of love, undeserving of happiness. But deep down, a small, quiet voice still whispered, "This isn't your fault." At the time, I didn't listen. But that voice would become important later, when everything finally shattered. The cracks in my marriage were no longer cracks, they were canyons. And though I didn't know it yet, Daniel was already preparing to push me over the edge. For now, all I knew was that I was losing him, losing myself, and losing the dream I once held so close. And in the middle of all that pain, I still clung to him, still prayed for a miracle, still believed love could fix what was already broken beyond repair. Marriage has a way of teaching you who a person really is. When I married Daniel, I thought I was joining my life to a man who would protect me, cherish me, and build a home with me. But as time passed, I realized I was living with someone who thrived on control. His charm had faded, replaced by cruelty. And the more I tried to hold our marriage together, the more he twisted everything until I began to question not just my worth, but even my sanity. It began with words. Little comments dropped casually but sharp enough to wound. You can't even cook rice without burning it, Amelia. What kind of wife are you? I'm tired of coming home to a woman who looks like she's been crying all day. Fix yourself up. You should be grateful I married you. Do you know how many women wish they were in your place? At first, I argued. I told him he was being unfair, that I was trying, that I was doing my best. But Daniel had a way of twisting things. When I cooked a meal and he refused to eat it, he would say, "I'm just not hungry. Stop being dramatic." When he came home late and I asked where he'd been, he'd sneer, "You're paranoid. Why are you always trying to control me?" When I cried because of his insults, he'd sigh and say, "There you go again, making everything about you. You're too sensitive." Slowly, I began to wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the problem really was me. That's the power of gaslighting. It makes you doubt your own reality. Daniel's cruelty didn't stop at home. He found ways to humiliate me in public too. One evening, we attended a friend's dinner party. Everyone was laughing, talking about their plans and businesses. I sat quietly listening when someone turned to me and asked, "So, Amelia, what are your plans for the future? Any career ambitions?" Before I could answer, Daniel chuckled loudly. "Plans? Her only plan is to cry at home because she can't give me children." The room fell silent. Heat rushed to my face. My hands trembled under the table as I forced a weak smile, trying to laugh it off. But inside, I was dying. On the way home, I whispered, "Daniel, why would you say that? Why would you embarrass me like that in front of everyone?" He rolled his eyes. "Stop being so dramatic. It was just a joke. Learn to take one." A joke. That's what he called it. To him, my pain was entertainment. Little by little, Daniel isolated me. When friends called, he complained. "Why are you always gossiping? Shouldn't you be focusing on our home?" When I visited Mama too often, he snapped. "Are you married to your mother or to me?" When I wanted to take a small job to keep myself busy, he shook his head. "What will people think if my wife is out there working like she's desperate? Stay home. I'll provide." But he didn't provide love. He provided chains. Chains of control, of humiliation, of loneliness. I stopped reaching out to friends. I stopped visiting Mama as much. I stayed home, waiting for him, hoping that if I did everything right, if I pleased him enough, he would look at me again the way he used to. But the man I married was gone. By our 4th year of marriage, Daniel's cruelty had become routine. But nothing prepared me for the betrayal that would come next. I had been saving money since before our marriage. Every coin, every note carefully tucked away in a small account. Over the years, I managed to save $12,000. It wasn't much compared to the fortunes of others, but to me, it was hope. Hope for a future home, for children, for emergencies. One evening, Daniel came home buzzing with excitement. His eyes gleamed the way they used to when he first courted me. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I had fallen in love with. "Amelia," he said, dropping his bag on the couch, "I have an idea that's going to change our lives." I leaned forward, eager. "What is it?" "A business," he said, pacing the room. "A dry cleaning business. My friend is already running a branch, and it's booming. He offered me a chance to invest and open our own location. This is it, Amelia. This is our chance to finally build something for ourselves." His excitement was contagious. I wanted so badly to believe in him, to believe in us. "That sounds amazing," I said cautiously. "But Daniel, where will we get the money?" He stopped pacing and turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "That's where you come in." My stomach tightened. "Me? You've been saving, haven't you? Don't act like you haven't. I know you. You've probably got thousands stashed away, just sitting there. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Our future, Amelia. You want children, don't you? You want a home, a life together? Then trust me. Invest in me. In us." I froze. That money was my safety net, the only thing I had to my name if everything went wrong. But the way he looked at me, the way he spoke, it felt like saying no would mean betraying him. "Daniel, it's all I have," I whispered. "Every bit of security I've saved for myself." He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. "Security? You think you need security from me? From your own husband? Is that what you're saying?" Tears filled my eyes. "No, Just what?" he barked. "You don't trust me? After everything I've done for you? After I chose you? Even though you can't give me children, even though other women would have killed to be in your place, you still don't trust me?" His words cut deep. He twisted my greatest wound, the infertility, into a weapon to force my compliance. I sobbed, shaking my head. "No, Daniel, that's not what I mean. I do trust you. I'm scared." "Then prove it," he said coldly. "Prove that you're my wife. Prove that you believe in me. Or maybe you really are nothing more than a barren woman with a pile of useless money." I broke. I transferred everything to him. All $12,000. For a while, Daniel was happy. He threw himself into the business with his friend, spending long hours away from home. At first, I told myself it was worth it, that he was building something for us, that my sacrifice would finally bring us closer. And when the business began to thrive, when customers poured in and money started flowing, I dared to hope. But success didn't soften Daniel. It hardened him. He came home later and later, strutting with arrogance, his phone buzzing with calls he never explained. He began to dress differently, to spend money lavishly, to carry himself like he was above me. And when I asked about the business, about whether we would finally share in the profits, his smile turned cruel. "Don't forget, Amelia," he sneered. "That was an investment. And investments don't always pay off the way you expect. Be patient." Patient. After giving him everything, I was still expected to wait. And though I didn't know it then, that $12,000 was not an investment in our future. It was the price I paid for my own heartbreak. Because Daniel had not only taken my money, he had taken my trust. And soon, he would take everything else. Looking back, I realized that was the moment my marriage truly ended. Not the day he insulted me in front of friends, not the nights he called me barren, not even the countless tears I cried into my pillow. It ended the day I handed him my savings. The day I proved my loyalty with the last thing I had to my name. Because after that, there was nothing left for him to take, except my dignity.
And he would come for that too.
The business expanded quickly, thanks to the $12,000 I had handed him. Within a year, he opened not just one location but 2, then 3. People in our community admired him, calling him ambitious, smart, driven. Whenever we attended events, he was the man everyone wanted to shake hands with. He bought new suits, his shoes always polished, his watch gleaming. His voice grew louder, his laughter bolder. He carried himself like a king who had conquered his land. But while the world praised him, at home he treated me like nothing more than a servant he had outgrown. "Don't wait up for me," he said one evening as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. "I'll be late. Meetings." The word meetings became his shield. He used it for everything. Dinners he didn't attend, nights he didn't come home, weekends he disappeared. When I asked questions, he cut me off. "Stop nagging me, Amelia. You should be grateful I let you stay in this house." Grateful. As if my money hadn't helped build the empire he now flaunted. As if my sacrifice had been nothing but a trivial footnote in his story. At dinner, he no longer sat with me. He ate out. When I cooked his favorite meals, they went untouched, growing cold on the table while I sat staring at the empty chair across from me. The home I once dreamed would be filled with warmth and laughter became a silent museum of what we used to be. His neglect seeped into every corner of our marriage. He no longer asked how I felt, no longer held my hand, no longer looked at me as if I mattered. If I tried to talk about my day, he interrupted.
"Not now."
"I'm tired." If I suggested we spend time together, he scoffed. "Do you know how busy I am? Do you think money makes itself?" He began criticizing the smallest things. If I wore a new dress, he would frown. "Who are you trying to impress?" If I styled my hair, he'd sneer. "Why bother? It won't change anything." It didn't matter what I did. I was always wrong in his eyes. And the more he diminished me, the smaller I became. Soon, I realized why Daniel no longer looked at me. He was looking at someone else. Vanessa. The woman who had once been just a mistake, the mother of his child, had found her way back into his life. It started with whispers, neighbors who hinted that they had seen Daniel with her, friends who grew quiet when I walked into the room. At first, I dismissed them, clinging desperately to denial. But denial doesn't hold forever. One night, I overheard him on the phone. His voice, usually harsh with me, was soft, almost tender. "Yes, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't worry, she won't suspect a thing." The words sliced through me. I stood frozen in the hallway, my breath caught in my chest, every syllable confirming what my heart already knew. The next morning, I tried to confront him. My hands shook as I poured his tea. "Daniel, who were you talking to last night?" He didn't even look at me. "No one." "I heard you," I pressed gently. "You said, she won't suspect a thing. Who is she?" He slammed his cup down, tea splashing onto the table. His eyes burned. "Are you spying on me now? Is that what you've become? A pathetic, paranoid wife?" I swallowed my tears, fear knotting in my stomach. He had turned the question back on me, making me feel guilty for daring to seek the truth. But the truth refused to stay hidden. One afternoon, I decided to surprise him at the business. I prepared a lunch basket, filling it with his favorite foods, hoping a small gesture might remind him of what we once shared. When I arrived, my steps slowed as I approached the glass window of his office. And there she was, Vanessa, perched on his desk, laughing, her hand brushing against his. Daniel leaned in, his hand resting on her waist, his smile softer than any he had given me in years. My heart stopped. The basket slipped from my trembling hands, the food spilling onto the pavement. I turned and walked away quickly, my vision blurred by tears. That night, he came home smelling faintly of her perfume. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The image of them together had burned itself into my memory. Even after seeing them, I tried to hold on. I prayed, begged, pleaded with God to heal my marriage. I thought of my vows, the promises I made at the altar, the sacrifices I had endured. Surely it couldn't all be for nothing. But Daniel had already made his choice. One evening, as I dusted the shelves in the living room, I heard his voice coming from the study. The door was slightly ajar. "Yes, Vanessa," he said, his tone sharp but confident. "Don't worry. Soon she'll be out of the way. You and I will finally have the life we deserve." I froze. "She's nothing without me," he continued. "She gave me money, yes, but that was a gift. I don't owe her a thing. Once the papers are signed, it's over." The words crashed over me like a wave, knocking the air from my lungs. My knees buckled, and I gripped the wall to keep from falling. My husband, the man I had loved and sacrificed for, was plotting my replacement. I stumbled away before he could notice, my body shaking, my heart splintering into pieces. Days later, the final dagger came. Daniel walked into the kitchen, a folder in his hand. He tossed it onto the table with a smirk. "What's this?" I asked, my voice trembling as I reached for it. "Divorce papers," he said casually, as though he were asking me to pass the salt. My eyes blurred as I flipped through the pages. My chest heaved. "Divorce? Daniel, after everything I've done? After giving you everything I had?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You gave me money, Amelia. That's not love. That was an investment. And investments don't always pay off." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "So that's it? After years together, after sacrifices, after my soul, you just throw me away?" His eyes were cold, unflinching. "You are nothing, Amelia. You couldn't give me children. You couldn't make me happy. Be grateful I kept you this long." The cruelty of his words cut deeper than any blade. That night, I fell to the floor of our bedroom, sobs racking my body. I clutched my chest, gasping for air, as if grief itself were suffocating me. I had no children to comfort me, no husband to hold me, no savings to fall back on. Everything I had poured into Daniel had vanished. I packed my clothes with trembling hands, tears staining the fabric. As I zipped the suitcase, I glanced once more at the room that had been both my dream and my prison. And then I walked out. I went to Mama's house, collapsing into her arms like a child. She stroked my hair gently, whispering, "My daughter, don't break yourself for a man who never deserved you." I cried until I had no tears left. My life as I knew it was over. That night, I realized something I hadn't before. Love alone cannot hold a marriage. Sacrifice, patience, devotion, none of it matters when it is poured into someone who only takes and never gives. I had believed endurance was strength. But endurance, without respect, is simply slow destruction. Daniel's arrogance had stripped me of everything. His betrayal had crushed me. His divorce papers had ended the chapter. But what I didn't know yet was that endings can also be beginnings. And though I felt broken, a different version of me was being carved from the ruins. When I left Daniel's house that night with my suitcase in hand, I felt like I was carrying not just clothes, but the broken pieces of myself. My legs shook as I dragged the bag down the street, my chest heaving with silent sobs. The night air was heavy, and each step felt like I was walking away from a life that had stolen everything from me. I arrived at Mama's home just before midnight. She opened the door in her wrapper, eyes wide with alarm. "Amelia," she gasped, pulling me inside. "What happened? Why are you here like this?" The sight of her face, lined with years of both strength and struggle, shattered whatever dam I had tried to hold back. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mama," I choked, "he's gone. He doesn't want me anymore." She guided me to the old wooden chair by the table, her hands trembling slightly as she brushed my tears away.
"Sit, my daughter.
"Tell me everything." Through broken sentences and gasps of air, I told her about the betrayal, the divorce papers, the cruel words Daniel had hurled at me. Mama listened silently, her eyes never leaving my face. When I finally finished, the silence between us was so thick I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. At last, she took my hand. Her voice was steady, but I saw the pain swimming in her eyes. "Amelia, you have suffered enough. But hear me. Your suffering is not the end of your story. A man who cannot value you does not define your worth." I shook my head weakly. "But Mama, I have nothing left. No husband, no children, no money. Nothing." "You have me," she said firmly. "And you still have your breath. As long as you live, you can rise again." Her words didn't heal me instantly, but they planted a seed. That night, I lay on the small bed in the room I had grown up in, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how I would ever put myself back together. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I woke each morning with a heaviness in my chest, my mind replaying Daniel's words over and over. "You are nothing." They echoed whenever I looked in the mirror. My eyes were swollen from crying, my body thin from stress. I could barely eat. The vibrant young woman who once dreamed of a happy home was gone, replaced by a shell moving through the motions of life. Mama tried to lift me up. She cooked meals, left encouraging notes by my bedside, reminded me to pray. Sometimes she sat quietly beside me, her hand resting on mine, saying nothing but giving me strength with her presence. One evening, when she found me curled up in bed, staring blankly at the wall, she sat down beside me. "My daughter," she said softly, "if you sit in ashes too long, the fire that once burned in you will die completely. You cannot let him take that from you.
Cry, yes.
Mourn what you lost. But when the tears dry, stand up again." Her words pierced through the fog in my mind. For the first time, I realized I had a choice, to stay broken or to fight for myself. Healing didn't come overnight. It came in small, quiet steps. I began by helping Mama around the house, sweeping, cooking, fetching water. The routine gave me something to hold on to. The smell of stew simmering on the stove, the scrape of the broom across the floor, the sound of chickens clucking outside. It reminded me that life went on, even if my heart felt stuck in the past. I started writing in a small notebook Mama gave me. At first, the pages were filled with anger, grief, and bitterness. But slowly, the words shifted. I began to write about dreams I once had, about the kind of life I still longed for, even if it felt impossible. Mama noticed the change in me. One morning, as we prepared breakfast, she smiled faintly. "You are standing taller, Amelia. The clouds are still there, but I see the sun breaking through." I smiled weakly, grateful for her constant faith in me. It was during this fragile season of rebuilding that I met Michael. Mama had asked me to deliver food to a local community event. Reluctantly, I agreed, carrying trays of snacks and bottles of juice to the small hall. I wasn't in the mood to be around people, but Mama insisted. When I arrived, the place buzzed with laughter and chatter. I tried to stay in the background, arranging the food quietly, hoping no one would notice me. But someone did. "Excuse me," a warm voice said. I looked up, startled, and saw a man holding a camera. He was tall but not imposing, with gentle eyes that seemed to notice everything. His shirt was simple, sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly tousled from the heat. "You arranged these?" he asked, gesturing to the table. I nodded.
Yes.
My mother asked me to help. "They look perfect," he said with a smile. Then he lifted his camera. "Would you mind if I took a picture? The light is catching the trays beautifully." I hesitated. I wasn't used to compliments anymore. I guess that's fine." He snapped a photo, then turned the camera to show me. The picture wasn't just of food. It captured the effort, the care in the way everything was laid out. "You have an eye for detail," he said. "That's a gift." For a moment, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Over the next few weeks, I saw him again at different community events. His name was Michael, a photographer who often volunteered his time to document gatherings. He never pushed his way into my life. Instead, he appeared gently, like a steady presence. He asked questions about me, not intrusive ones, just simple things. "How are you today? What's your favorite meal to cook? Do you like reading?" Questions Daniel had never bothered to ask. I was guarded at first. Years with Daniel had taught me that kindness often came with conditions. But Michael was different. He never made me feel small. He never twisted my words. When he spoke, it wasn't to dominate, it was to listen. One afternoon, we sat outside the hall after an event. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange. Michael glanced at me and said, "You carry yourself like someone who's been through fire, but you also carry yourself like someone who survived it." The words caught me off guard. My throat tightened. Sometimes surviving doesn't feel like much. He shook his head gently. "Survival is everything. It means the story isn't over yet." I turned away, blinking back tears, but for the first time in a long while, I felt seen.
Truly seen.
The more I spoke with Michael, the more I noticed the stark difference between him and Daniel. Daniel had been all arrogance, his charm a mask for control. Michael was humble, his confidence quiet but steady. Daniel had mocked me in public, using my pain as a joke. Michael protected my dignity, never letting a harsh word escape his lips. Daniel had demanded loyalty while giving nothing in return. Michael gave kindness freely, without expecting anything back. It was disarming, almost frightening, to experience this contrast. I found myself waiting for the mask to slip, for Michael to reveal cruelty hidden beneath his gentleness. But it never came. I didn't fall in love immediately.
My heart was too bruised for that.
But slowly, through his patience and quiet consistency, Michael planted a seed of hope in me. He reminded me that not all men sought to control or destroy, that there were people in the world who could look at me and see more than my scars. One evening, after walking me home from an event, he stopped at the gate. The moonlight cast a soft glow on his face. "Amelia," he said softly, "you don't have to answer this now or ever. But I want you to know you deserve to be happy again." My throat tightened, tears pricking my eyes. I didn't respond, but inside, something stirred. A fragile, tentative hope. Living with Daniel had taken me to the depths of despair. Leaving him had left me shattered. But Mama's unwavering support and Michael's unexpected kindness became the pillars on which I began to rebuild. For the first time in years, I felt the faintest hint of light breaking through the darkness. And though I didn't know where this new path would lead, I knew one thing. I was no longer walking alone. The days I spent with Mama helped me survive, but survival wasn't enough. I needed purpose, something that gave me a reason to rise each morning and keep moving. It was Mama who planted the first idea. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch shelling beans, she said quietly, "Do you remember the restaurant I used to run before I grew too tired? People still ask me about it. They remember the taste of my stew, the way they felt at our tables. Maybe it's time to bring it back. Not for me, but for you."
Her words startled me.
"Mama, I don't know if I can. I've never run a business before." She chuckled softly. "You help me often enough. And besides, it's not just about business. It's about feeding people. You have a gift for care, Amelia. You just need to believe it again." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The thought of rebuilding something from ashes scared me. But deep down, I knew she was right. If I didn't try, I would remain stuck in grief forever. The old restaurant building still stood on the corner of our street, though it was in disrepair. The paint had peeled, the windows were clouded with dust, and the door creaked loudly when I pushed it open. Inside, cobwebs stretched across corners, the air stale with abandonment. But I saw potential. I spent weeks cleaning it out, scrubbing floors until my knees ached, wiping tables until they gleamed, painting walls with fresh coats of white and soft green. Each stroke of the brush felt like a stroke across my wounded heart, covering the old, making space for the new. Michael noticed my efforts. One Saturday, he stopped by with his camera slung across his shoulder. "You're really doing this," he said, looking around the half-painted room. I wiped sweat from my forehead. "I have to. I can't keep living as though my life ended with Daniel." He smiled gently. "If anyone can turn this place into something beautiful, it's you." He returned the next day with a set of hands I didn't expect, friends who volunteered to help repaint, fix broken chairs, and mend the leaking roof. For the first time in years, I felt surrounded by people who wanted to see me succeed, not fail. When the renovations were nearly done, Mama sat with me at the front table, her eyes twinkling. "So, what will you call it?" I hesitated. "I don't know. It has to mean something." She tapped my hand gently. "Then call it what you want people to feel when they eat here." I thought about it long into the night. I thought about hunger, not just for food but for healing, for wholeness, for second chances. And then the word came to me: nourish. The next morning, I painted the name in bold letters across the signboard. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a promise. A promise that anyone who stepped inside would leave with more than a full stomach. They would leave with comfort. On the morning of the reopening, my hands shook as I tied my apron. I worried no one would come, that I would fail before I even began. But by noon, the tables were filled. Neighbors, friends, even strangers who had heard whispers of the comeback crowded inside. The smell of Mama's old recipes filled the air: jollof rice rich with spices, soups simmering with flavor, fried plantains crisp and golden. Customers smiled as they ate, some closing their eyes to savor the taste. Laughter filled the room, mixing with the clatter of plates and the hum of conversation. At the counter, a woman leaned over and said, "It feels like home here. Don't ever stop." Her words sank into me like sunlight. For the first time in years, I felt capable again. As weeks turned into months, Nourish grew steadily. People traveled from nearby towns just to eat Mama's recipes and my own additions. I experimented with new dishes, adding my own touch, while keeping the essence of what made the food special. Michael photographed the meals and posted them online, spreading the word. His pictures capture not just the plates but the atmosphere, the warmth of people gathering, the joy on faces, the care in every detail. Soon, we had more customers than we could seat. I hired 2 assistants, then 3, training them with patience I never knew I had. For once, I was building something of my own. Not for Daniel. Not for anyone else. For me. Every evening, as I counted the earnings and locked up, I felt a quiet pride. I wasn't rich, but I was standing on my own 2 feet. Through it all, Michael remained by my side. He didn't try to take over. He didn't demand recognition. He simply showed up, sometimes with a toolbox to fix a loose hinge, sometimes with flowers to brighten the tables, sometimes just with his steady presence. One night, after closing, we sat together on the steps outside the restaurant. The air was cool, the street quiet except for the chirp of crickets. "You've built something incredible," he said, his gaze warm. I smiled faintly. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," he replied. "You just needed someone to remind you that you could." I looked at him, my chest tightening. His words were not like Daniel's, who had always demanded, belittled, controlled. Michael's words lifted me. As months passed, our bond deepened. At first, I resisted the idea of love. My heart still bore scars, and I feared opening it again only to be torn apart. But Michael never rushed me. He let time do the healing. He learned the rhythms of my days, the things that made me smile, the stories that weighed on me. He asked about my dreams, not to twist them, but to nurture them. One evening, after a long day, he walked me home. At the gate, he paused. "Amelia," he said softly, "I know your heart has been through storms. I don't expect you to love me quickly or easily. But if you ever choose me, I promise you this, I will never make you feel small. I will never make you doubt yourself. And I will stand with you through everything." Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't speak, but in that moment, I knew his words were true. By the second year of running Nourish, the restaurant had become a local favorite. People celebrated birthdays there, couples had anniversaries, families gathered after church. The walls that had once echoed with emptiness now carried the laughter of dozens of souls each week. And in the midst of it all, Michael's presence became more than support. It became love. One quiet evening, surrounded by friends and family, Michael asked me to marry him. There were no grand gestures, no extravagant displays, just a simple ring, his steady gaze, and words that melted the last pieces of my fear. "Amelia, you are strength, you are grace, and you are home to me. Will you let me be home to you?"
I said yes.
Not because I was desperate to be loved, but because I finally understood what love was meant to be: gentle, patient, safe. Rebuilding the restaurant rebuilt me. Naming it Nourish was more than branding. It was my declaration that I, too, deserved nourishment, not just of the body, but of the soul. Through hard work, community support, and Michael's quiet strength, I found not just independence, but joy. For years, I had been told I was nothing. But standing there, surrounded by people who valued me, with Michael's hand steady in mine, I knew the truth. I was more than enough. Life with Michael was different. It wasn't built on grand promises or dazzling displays. It was simple, steady, and safe. For the first time in years, I could breathe without fear of what words might be hurled at me. I could laugh without bracing myself for ridicule. And yet, one shadow lingered. Motherhood. Daniel's cruel words, "You're barren. You'll never have children," still echoed in the quiet corners of my mind. Though Michael never pressured me, never even brought the subject up, I sometimes caught myself staring at mothers with their babies, a dull ache stirring in my chest. One morning, I woke up feeling unusually tired. At first, I dismissed it as stress from the restaurant. But then came the waves of nausea, the sudden cravings, the heaviness in my body. Mama noticed before I did. "You've been pale," she said, narrowing her eyes as I struggled to finish breakfast. "When was your last monthly?" The question struck me still. I counted silently in my head. My breath caught. Could it be? I bought a test that afternoon, hiding it in my bag as if it were contraband. In the bathroom, I clutched it with trembling hands, praying yet afraid to hope. When the result appeared, my knees gave way. Positive. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. My body, the same body Daniel had mocked, was carrying life. Still, doubt gnawed at me. What if it was a mistake? What if it ended too soon? I made an appointment with the doctor, my heart pounding as I sat in the waiting room. Michael insisted on coming with me, holding my hand firmly as though to say, "Whatever happens, we face it together." After the ultrasound, the doctor turned to us with a smile. "Congratulations. Not only are you pregnant, you're carrying 3 babies." The room spun. 3? I whispered, sure I had misheard.
Yes.
Triplets. I covered my mouth, a sob escaping. Michael's hand tightened around mine, his eyes wide with shock, then filling with tears. 3, he repeated softly, a smile breaking across his face. Amelia, do you hear that? You're going to be a mother 3 times over. I wept openly, the sound breaking free from years of buried pain. The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel had spat the word barren at me, had declared I would never know the joy of motherhood. And now here I was, carrying not 1 child but 3. Pregnancy was not easy. Carrying triplets tested every part of me. I was often exhausted, my body heavy, my nights sleepless. But every kick, every flutter reminded me that life was growing inside me. Life that had chosen me despite every cruel word spoken against me. Michael was endlessly patient. He massaged my swollen feet, cooked when I couldn't stand, whispered encouragement when I cried from the discomfort. He never once complained. Every sacrifice is worth it, he told me one night as he tucked me into bed. Because these babies are proof, not of what you lost, but of what you've gained. Mama hovered too, fussing with pillows, cooking broths, humming softly as she prayed over me. Her faith became my anchor, reminding me that sometimes life saves its sweetest gifts for the moment we least expect them. The day the triplets arrived was both terrifying and miraculous. Hours of labor left me weak, drenched in sweat, clinging to Michael's hand. But then the cries filled the room. One, then another, then another. When the nurses placed them in my arms, my vision blurred with tears. Tiny faces, tiny hands, 3 perfect lives. My babies, I whispered, kissing their foreheads. You are my miracle. Michael leaned over, his voice thick with emotion. Our miracle. I looked at him, then at the children, and a rush of gratitude swept through me. I had once been told I was nothing, but now I held everything that mattered. News of my triplets spread quickly through the community. People whispered, not with pity this time, but with awe. The same mouths that had once repeated Daniel's cruel words now marveled at how life had proven him wrong. Every time I looked at my children, I saw justice, not the kind served in courts, but the quiet, poetic kind life itself delivers. I didn't need to say anything to Daniel. The existence of my children was louder than any words I could have spoken.
Triplets.
Proof that love, patience, and faith had given me the one thing Daniel swore I'd never have. And with them, I no longer felt broken. I felt whole. Life with Michael and the triplets had brought me a peace I never thought I'd know. Every morning, their giggles filled the house, and every night, I watched them sleep with a sense of awe. They were my proof that life could restore what was stolen. So when the wedding invitation arrived, it almost felt like a joke. The envelope was thick, gold-embossed, with elegant script that read, Mr. Daniel and Ms. Vanessa request the honor of your presence at their wedding. I stared at it for a long moment, my chest tightening. Michael found me at the table, the card trembling in my hand. Who is it from? He asked gently. I placed it on the table, my fingers cold. Daniel. He's marrying Vanessa. Michael's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed soft on me. And he invited you? I nodded, swallowing hard. This isn't kindness. It's mockery. He wants me to walk into a room where everyone will look at me and whisper about the woman he discarded. Mama, who had been listening quietly from the corner, shook her head. That man's pride knows no bounds. He wants to humiliate you one last time. For a moment, I considered tearing the invitation to pieces. Why should I give him the satisfaction of my presence? But then a thought stirred. What if I didn't go as the broken woman he remembered? What if I walked into that hall not with shame, but with the life he swore I could never have? I looked at Michael, then at the triplets playing on the rug. My lips curved into the faintest smile. We'll go. The day of Daniel's wedding dawned bright and clear. I dressed the triplets in matching outfits, tiny suits for the boys, a little white dress with bows for my daughter. Their laughter lightened the heaviness in my chest. Michael, ever patient, helped me into a simple yet elegant gown. It wasn't extravagant, but it fit me perfectly. I stood before the mirror, my children at my side, and for the first time, I didn't see the broken woman Daniel had left behind. I saw a mother, a wife, a survivor who had found joy again. When the limousine pulled up outside, the children squealed with delight. "Mama, look," one of the boys cried, clapping his hands. The driver opened the door for us, and as I stepped inside with Michael and the triplets, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. This was no longer about revenge. It was about truth. The limousine pulled up to the grand hall where Daniel and Vanessa's wedding was already in full swing. Guests in shimmering attire streamed through the doors, laughter spilling out into the street. When the car stopped, the driver stepped out and opened the door. Gasps rippled through the crowd gathered outside as I emerged, holding my daughter's hand while Michael guided the boys out. The whispers started instantly. "Is that Amelia?" She came in a limousine, and, with children, 3 of them, heads turned as we walked toward the entrance. The triplets giggled, pointing at the flowers lining the path, their innocence contrasting sharply with the stunned stares around us. Michael walked tall beside me, his hand resting gently on my back, his presence both protective and proud. Inside the hall, the music faltered for a moment as eyes shifted toward us. The murmur of whispers rose like a tide.
Wait, isn't that your poor ex-wife? I thought you said she could never have children. Then how did she show up at our wedding with triplets?
At the front of the hall, Daniel stood beside Vanessa, his hand gripping hers. His face, smug only moments before, drained of color when his gaze landed on me. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Vanessa's smile froze as her eyes darted between me, the children, and Daniel. Confusion flickered, then suspicion. I held my chin high, my step steady as I led the children to a seat near the front. The whispers grew louder. "She looks radiant. She came in style. And those children." Daniel said she was barren. The words buzzed through the hall like bees, each one stinging Daniel's pride. Finally, unable to contain himself, he stepped forward. "Amelia," he hissed under his breath when he reached me. "Why are you here?" I looked at him calmly, my voice steady. "I was invited." His jaw tightened. "This isn't funny. You're trying to embarrass me." I tilted my head slightly. "I didn't have to try. Your lies embarrass themselves." The crowd around us pretended not to listen, but their ears strained for every word. Vanessa pulled at his arm. "Daniel, what is she talking about? You told me she could never have children." Daniel's face twisted, caught between rage and fear. "Vanessa, don't listen." But she pulled away, her eyes blazing. "You lied to me? All this time, you made me believe she was barren, that you left her because she was useless." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests shook their heads, whispering, their once admiring glances at Daniel now laced with scorn. I remained seated, my children playing quietly beside me, their innocence shielding me from the ugliness of the moment. Daniel's voice rose, desperate now. "You don't understand, Amelia. You don't get to walk in here and—" I stood slowly, facing him. My voice was calm, but it carried through the hall. "No, Daniel. You don't get to define me anymore. You don't get to strip me of my worth. Look at them." I gestured to my children, their wide eyes watching curiously. "They are my proof. Proof that I was never broken. Proof that everything you said was a lie." The hall fell silent. For a moment, all that could be heard was the rustle of dresses and the quiet giggles of my children. Vanessa's face hardened. She turned on Daniel. "You humiliated her. You lied to me. And now everyone knows." Daniel's lips moved, but no sound came out. His arrogance, his power, the image he had so carefully built, all of it crumbled in front of the very people he had tried to impress. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into open condemnation. So he lied all along. And treated her like dirt. Now she's happier without him. I felt their eyes on me, not with pity this time, but with respect. Mama, sitting proudly near the front, nodded at me, her face glowing with quiet triumph. Michael reached for my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. Daniel, pale and shaken, stood at the altar with Vanessa glaring at him, his grand day unraveling before his eyes. I leaned closer, my voice low but clear enough for him to hear. This is what you wanted, isn't it? For everyone to see me? Well, here I am. With that, I turned away, gathering my children, Michael following close behind. We walked out of the hall as whispers trailed behind us, not whispers of shame, but whispers of awe. As the limousine door closed and we pulled away from the hall, I looked at my children's faces, their laughter filling the air. Michael squeezed my hand. You didn't just walk in there, Amelia. You reclaimed everything he tried to take. I smiled softly, watching the hall grow smaller in the distance. No, I whispered. Life gave me everything he swore I'd never have. That is enough. And with that, I let the chapter of Daniel close for good, my heart full not of bitterness, but of peace. For me, the wedding should have been the end. I had walked in with my children, with my husband by my side, and with dignity in my heart. I had spoken my truth, and for the first time in years, Daniel had nothing left to throw at me. When I left that ballroom, I felt like I had finally closed the chapter. But life has a way of revealing what people try so hard to hide. Daniel's unraveling came quickly, and it was far uglier than I ever imagined. The whispers started almost immediately. Someone had recorded my speech, and soon the audio spread from phone to phone. Overnight, Daniel went from being admired to being mocked. Headlines painted him as a fraud. People laughed at the man who once claimed strength but was exposed as weak. His reputation, the very thing he had built his world upon, began to crumble. And then came Vanessa. At first, she stood tall, pretending none of it mattered. But truth has a way of burning through appearances. When she realized the weight of everything I had revealed, about his infertility, about his lies, she couldn't hold on. She left him, and not quietly. There were lawyers, demands, and a storm of bitterness. The marriage that was supposed to be his victory became his quickest defeat. Business followed the same path. Clients pulled away, embarrassed to be associated with scandal. Partners turned cold. The empire I had once sacrificed everything to build with him started collapsing, piece by piece, until the man who once strutted around as though untouchable was suddenly working to survive. The man who used to look down on me now found himself beneath the very people he once mocked. I hadn't planned on being involved in any of it. My life had already moved forward. Michael, our children, our business, and peace I never thought I'd know. But justice has its way of knocking on your door. A lawyer explained that since I had been the one to fund Daniel's business from the very beginning, I had a right to demand what was mine. At first, I wanted to ignore it. I didn't need his money. But Mama reminded me, this isn't about need. It's about what he owes.
So I fought.
Quietly, calmly, and with proof that couldn't be denied. That recording of Daniel promising that the business was our future became the key. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. He was forced to pay me back with interest, over $400,000. To get it, he had to sell off what remained of his pride. By then, he had lost his business, his wife, his reputation, and the image he had spent years polishing.
And me?
I had gained everything he once told me I would never have: a loving family, a thriving business, and a life built on truth. Daniel's downfall was loud and public. My triumph was quiet and steady. He fell because his lies caught up with him. I rose because I finally learned to stand on my own truth. Sometimes the people who break you end up destroying themselves. Not because you push them, but because lies, arrogance, and cruelty always collapse in the end. My name is Amelia Michael. I am a successful businesswoman, a devoted wife, a loving mother, and a woman who learned that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you that you deserve far better than what they're offering. This is my story, and it has a very happy ending. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have ignored the invitation, or do you think I went too far? Or maybe you believe I didn't say enough? Let me know in the comment section. I'd truly love to read your thoughts. And before you go, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and share it with your loved ones. We post stories here on a regular, so make sure to check out the other videos too. Don't forget to leave your comments and opinions below. We'll see you in the next story. Bye for now.